And I think that's what's
I
fun.
never say I'm fluent.
Essence, you ready for us?
I like to be on the outside of the camera if I can't be. So hopefully I'm outside the frame, but still in earshot of everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Welcome, welcome. If this is your first time, welcome back. If it's not, if I have not given y'all a formal introduction, which I'm sure I have many of times, but it's always good to throw it out there one more time. I'm Robert Weedon III, the director and lead curator here at Arthur Wall's Fine Art Gallery, the biggest Black-owned art gallery in New York City.
Wow, good. Sorry, it just resonated with me.
It's fun to say during Black History Month because this is already a historical neighborhood, it's already a historical block. We've been here since, as a building, since 1889. And the way that this whole establishment started was a lot different than how it exists today. The church on the corner was originally built for an institution called the Harlem Club, which was a group of very white, very kind of like Protestant, devout religious community that was coming into Harlem to help create a town in their own right, in their own image. So with the church that's on the corner and the adjacent brownstones from 123rd to 122nd, they built all these buildings for the entire community to come in together with their family, live and reside within the buildings here and work, and then go to the Harlem Club that was up on the corner. The irony is that nowadays the church on the corner is a bit strange and sometimes really pushes that spectrum of freedom of speech when it comes to religious institutions. But this block now is, if I'm not mistaken, 100% Black owned and has been for at least the last 25 years. All with event spaces, all with Black businesses in the ground level, all with a sense of community and making sure that we get to continue to do what we're doing. Thank y'all for bearing with me. The name of tonight is Controlling the Narrative. And when we understand what our story actually is, we're able to draw inspiration and take power from that in different ways. So, although we've been here for a long time in many different ways, thank y'all for showing up the way that y'all showed up today. Follow us on Instagram. That's my commercial. There's QR codes and stuff all around here, but it's Artful Walls Gallery on Instagram. You'll see it. It looks just like us. And it's Artful Walls Gallery. Last thing I'll say before we jump into our fireside chat and then our panel discussion is there are three main objectives that I have, because I talked about community a few times. First and foremost, I'm working on creating brave space. No, sorry, I gotta say it in order of priority. First and foremost, we gotta create safe space. You gotta know that there's a place that you can go to and seek refuge in, or have a little bit of an oasis in terms of your experience in New York City, throughout the United States of America, wherever it is. This is a space that we hold dear and we hold true to, that when y'all come in this door, you shouldn't have to worry about much. You're welcome. You can feel comfortable, you can relax. There's people ordering food for you.
Who's on the way, guys?
We started this many years ago in my living room. So as this continues to evolve, people grow up within their own artistry, and now curation takes on more than just a few paintings in a small New York apartment, but an entire gallery space. I continue to extend that. I want to make sure it's safe space. The second thing, which I started with, I was eager, because tonight is all about brave space. Once y'all feel comfortable, I need to cultivate a space as a curator where y'all feel emboldened to tell me the ideas that have really been on your mind, that might push us forward or set us back. one way or another, that's the job. It's a bit of a midwifery, if you will, where I'm always trying to get the rawness out of y'all once y'all feel okay that what you got to say will be heard. And then if those two things can be accomplished, we'll end up with something that I call sacred space, where we'll be able to tell stories, share our experiences, and actually commune with each other. The root word for community, but like break bread and respect and empathize with one another's stories. We'll cherish it enough to pass it down, to make sure it survives, to make sure in 100 years from now they'll say, you won't believe it. They were doing this salon series called Controlling the Narrative here 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and now this is a theater company. Who would have thought? I don't know. I have no idea where it may go, but if we keep chugging away on those 3 levels, I'm sure we'll get somewhere special very soon. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass it over to Nai, and let y'all get into this conversation. Let me see if this helps. It might help.
Hi guys, welcome. Thank you guys for coming out because it was really snowing today, so it really just shows you care about community. Okay, I am sitting here with the talented and lovely Sarai Thompson, owner of Luxury Company. Yes. But you have other projects too. Can you tell us about everything that you do?
Everything. So I'm a multi-hyphenate in all sense of the word. Yeah, I really am. 9 to 5, so I am the senior social media manager for a brand called The Skin. I am over on their shopping content site called Skip Shopping. So kind of rolls into my fashion journey and it rolls into e-commerce. Outside of that, I am the founder of Luxury Company, so I plan events for creatives. Robert and I have done an event together. I have done fashion events, so like podcast showings, etc. So if you have an event, you're like, I don't feel like planning this. Let me get someone else to do it. That's where I'm coming back with. I'm an experimental girly, so you tell me the idea, and I'm gonna sit there and try and expand on it based off of your budget. Outside of that, from the subhead of that is the after party, which is my New York Fashion Week event that happens annually. We have mini moments as well, and that's more so a love letter to the fashion community that I was in, still find myself in through the party. But I was a fashion journalist and rolled into working for a brand called Harlem's Fashion Row. So I was doing work with Brandis Daniel, and I wanted to create a space where whether you were an up-and-coming designer in Atlanta, Houston, or a huge editor, you had a space that you could add to your New York Fashion Week schedule. So I'm the co-founder, and I have a team that also runs that event. So
Okay, beautiful. So you do a lot of things. How do you balance all of that?
that's a good question. I still don't fully have the answer to how I balance all of that, to be honest with you. I have a huge planner. Tabitha Brown came out with a planner, and I got old school. I started writing in it. At first I was digital. Digital wasn't working for me. But to be honest with you, it's really every day waking up and saying, what's my priorities? Whether it's, if I have a client for a specific event, then okay, they're my top priority because I want to give them my 110%. My job will always get my 9 to 5, and if I have breaks in between, I'll take calls with other clients that I have that I'm working with. If it's a New York Fashion Week thing, let's say we have a partnership with a brand, I'll hop on a partnership call on my lunch. So I'm always trying to find ways to wiggle those things in while still maintaining rest. And of course, I recently just launched my podcast, which is one of my other endeavors. And so adding that into the fold has been definitely more so my contingency plan of becoming a full-time entrepreneur, but also a lot of things that I do is giving back to others. So prioritizing the time sometimes can be hard when you enjoy giving. And so when you're someone that really enjoys, they say blessed to be a blessing, when you enjoy being a blessing, sometimes you don't realize sometimes when your own cup is empty. And so it does take a lot of every day doing a self-check with yourself and figuring out like, okay, am I overworking myself? maybe today your laundry is mad, bro. Go do your laundry. You know what I mean? So it's a daily thing. Yeah.
Thank you for being real about that. Because I feel like as a creative, like if you do a lot of things, you can kind of get, not lost, but there can be some things that get lost in translation. So let's talk about the beginning of your career. You started out in fashion media, and now you've transformed into like this media juggernaut. How did that come about?
Okay, so a lot of that came about from, so in the beginning of my career, I think I dedicated myself to trying to prove something to somebody and tie my work to a brand, or trying to prove like, hey, hire me because I do all of these amazing things. And when I moved to New York, I got tired of trying to beg somebody to understand my work. And I felt myself comparing to other people, or especially in fashion media, working at Vogue, like people who work at Vogue in those places, like I'm like, okay, I'm not, what's on my resume? Local media magazines in Atlanta, compared to, you know what I'm saying? So it was hard to feel like my worth was connected to, I really did not have a lot of self-esteem, to be honest, when I moved to New York City. And it came a point where I felt like, in order for me to control my narrative, I started to create my own brands and say, okay, at one point, somebody created a Vogue, somebody created an Essence, and so why can't I do that? And I think a lot of people will tell you, oh, well, the media is saturated, or this is saturated, everywhere is saturated, so many people on this earth. So but there's only one you. So that's something that I feel like kind of snowballed into, hopefully I'm answering your question, snowballed into my journey of going from fashion editorial that rolled into marketing and rolled into, okay, taking my 9 to 5 and planting seeds of the brands that I want to expand, that if I decide I don't want to be in my 9 to 5 anymore, I don't have to. So that's really what happened, yeah.
Tea. So sorry, let me just take a second. Okay. You have, can you delve into like the confidence aspect of it?
Ooh, that's a good point in regards to growing in my brands.
Like, how do you feel now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't lie and say, oh, I feel so confident. You can't tell me that. Granted, I'm looking, so I feel very confident all the time. However, I do have moments where I even have to lean into my communities to pour back into, to be honest. Especially if there is a low moment, because being a serial entrepreneur is taxing. It takes a lot out of you, and if you don't see a post on social media blowing up, or everybody showing up to your event, or all the things that you can think of, you start to say like, all right, what am I doing, bro? Like, why am I doing this? Is it even worth it? I'm tired. And so it's ebbs and flows in regards to confidence, but I will say controlling your narrative really does do something on the inside of you. It reclaims something that you're giving to somebody else to claim for you. So I will say that starting your own brands, it's powerful. And even if you don't start your own brand and you decide to control your narrative even within your workspace, whatever that looks like, whether that's demanding the salary that you deserve or the raise that you deserve, it feels really good that even if you don't get exactly what you're looking for, that you took control of what you deserve. And I feel like as a Black woman specifically, it can be really hard sometimes to feel like you have control. Like you can feel like you have control, and then someone sweeps the rug from under you. You don't feel like you have control, especially in this country. Yeah. So that's why I say there's a lot of ebbs and flows with that. There's never a moment where I feel here all the time. but your communities and the people you surround yourself with really plays a part in that self-worth. And if you don't have people to help remind you that you are that person, you are that guy, that girl, that however you identify, then you need to find your circle. And I think that helps with keeping that confidence up.
Definitely. Wait, so as a Black woman in business, you have been through some things.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us about a time where you had to like overcome something?
Oh my goodness, yes. So with the after party, for example, it's not easy saying I'm gonna do something during New York Fashion Week. A lot of people say, oh, I'm gonna do a little fashion thing at my friends or whatever. But I'm very, like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it well, and you're gonna tell somebody about it. And if you don't know already, like, you're gonna want to. And so, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that this event went in a certain way. I'm the logistics person on the team. My other co-founder is the marketing person. So I think about the itinerary, I think about the venue, I think about everything. It's like I see it as like a theatrical production. There's a time and there's a transition, and especially we have themes. New York Fashion Week is an art form, so you want things to go a certain way. And granted, not everything is gonna go exactly as planned, especially when you plan events, there's gonna be a moment where it's not gonna go exactly as planned. And one of the things that didn't go exactly as planned, which is a lovely thing with venues, is if you've ever done an event, and if not, some bars or venues in New York have a minimum spend, right? And there is a probability you might not make that minimum spend. You might make that minimum spend, you might not make your minimum spend. And there was a moment where I did not make that minimum spend. And everybody else in the party's having themselves a time. They're, whoa, this is the best party ever. So much friends, fashion week, people are taking pictures, and I'm crashing out in the back thinking about how the heck am I gonna pay this venue? Because in my mind, because I have confidence, I'm thinking, oh, I gotta make that. What? Historically, the year before we averaged out X. And then you don't average out those numbers. Then you start to think like, what am I doing? I'm never doing this again. What is the point? And I did owe, and I did have to talk to the venue, and they did put me on a payment plan, and that sucks because I live in Jersey. You pay for tolls, and you got bills, and you got rent, etc. I got student loans. Went to Syracuse, it's expensive. So there's a lot of things I'm like, okay, this is snowballing into a lot of stuff. But it was the feedback that I got from everyone though, from the event of, I made this connection. I got a job through this event. I networked, a lot of things that remind you of your why. Like, okay, God put this on my heart, and it's supposed to happen, and it's gonna happen. It's not supposed to happen, it's not supposed to happen. But that was a huge moment for me of just like finances play a big part in what feels like success and failure.
For sure. Let's talk about that, honestly. Finances. Y'all comfortable? Wait, this is the safe space. No. Okay, so how did you know that you were on the right path? What was that moment for you when you were like, nah, like this is right?
I don't trust myself, so I personally can't say I know. Honestly, it's a God thing. I'm very, I'm not someone who's big on religion, but I am a Christian and I have a relationship with God, right? And so for me, it's more so, I know some people are like, oh, God spoke to me. I woke up in a dream, like, he told me this. I don't hear those things, but I feel an inner, you feel it on the inside, what exactly it is. And sometimes it'll be as simple as me saying, God, what am I doing? Like, does this make any sense? Like, I feel like, am I just coming with more work for myself, or are you really putting this on my heart to do? And then there's something along the way that gives me the answer of, yeah, you're doing, this is exactly what you're supposed to do. Like the moment of me crashing out at a venue in Manhattan about a spend, and then getting the affirmations of, oh, this event was impactful. And so it's moments like that, even with my company, or even recently with my podcast. Like, me coming up with that podcast was, oh God, because I can't balance realistically anything else, to be honest with you. It's like, how am I gonna add this to my plate? But I felt like it was something that was needed, and God is going to do it in a way where it's going to flow into my schedule. If it feels overwhelming, then something must be exiting. And so All that to say is I don't trust myself. Everybody, like, people have their intuition, but I think intuition is God. And so, I'm just mere human, and then I just kind of ride the waves in the boogie board and see where it goes.
I love that, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about your podcast. Like, what types of things do you talk about on there? Like, what's your vision?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about my podcast. So my podcast is called The Girls Zone, but it's not just for the girls, fellas, it's also for y'all. It's a women-guided conversation. So the purpose is for men to also get a perspective of certain things from a woman's lens. But I also I have a couple of guys that are also gonna be on the podcast, but if a woman is talking about X, we're gonna go based off of what a woman is talking about currently. So for example, my first episode that launched yesterday was about breast, because trending on social media, especially with Agent Orange becoming president right now, everybody on social media has been saying, especially Black women, we're just gonna chill for the next 4 years. Like, I'm not about to, I'm gonna relax, right? And so on the podcast, we're gonna talk about breast. How is breast achievable? Because that's something that women are talking about currently, is they're exhausted. And not saying like Black men also are part of that conversation, but it's, again, it's a women-led thing. So it's a safe space to have conversations, candid conversations, and then have the guys chime in as well based off of what women are saying. And so that's the premise of it. It's really just a safe space, especially in this political climate right now where it feels like you have to scream to have your voice be heard. And so I didn't see any podcasts like this. There's a lot of podcasts that are women-led that may talk about, I don't know, I was gonna curse and I'm not, men are not great, that's what I'm gonna say, or relationships, or a certain partner is getting on their nerves, or like I wanna try and remain like gender neutral when I say certain things as well, is that it's regardless, there's a lot of things that can be negative, and I don't want it to be a sugar-coated conversation too, I want it to be realistic. And so that's the purpose of the podcast. But also, I'm filming in Atlanta. So the studio's in Atlanta, so it's back and forth. So I fly down to film the podcast. For a reason of, I grew up in Atlanta, I was Georgia State, and I want to get back to, I have unfinished business in that city. I left when I was in my early 20s. So if anybody wants to be on the podcast, I don't want to be on it, you don't have to fly to Atlanta, I would love to have y'all. But yeah, that's the purpose of it.
I love that. First off, more women need to speak. So anytime, like, I'm just, I didn't say that right, but like, more women need platforms to speak and to really shine. So I want to give you your flowers for creating this. Yes. Wait. So, did you drop your first episode yet?
Yes, yesterday.
Okay.
Yesterday I dropped
Yay,
it.
congrats.
Thank you. So we're on Instagram. It's the GRLS Pod. It's also in my Instagram, my personal Instagram bio. My IG is Sarai. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I wanted to open up to the audience. Do you guys have any questions?
Not really a question, but a statement when you were saying like how God speaks to you. And I think sometimes we get overwhelmed and are saying like, God told us in the Bible, He's not coming through the big thunderstorm all the time or the loud or roaring. Wait, I think it was my glasses. But sometimes, you know, He's a still voice. And it sounds like God is speaking to you through that still voice. And like, I'm not saying it's in a contradictory way, but you do trust yourself. Like, look how far you came. Like, you took a bet on you every step of the way. Like, you didn't have to do all those entrepreneurial businesses that you have. You're continually to trust yourself. You're continually, like, betting on yourself, putting yourself out there, and you still do hear God's voice. And just because He speaks to you differently from everybody else, don't diminish that at the same time. Because you said you have a relationship, and that relationship is very peculiar to you and Him.
Right.
It doesn't have to look like anybody else's, and that's why it's so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. I just felt like
That would just be saying stay encouraged.
I have a question.
Sure.
As a fellow multifaceted creator, my question for you is like, how do you manage your mental health on a daily basis?
Oh, I have a therapist.
Okay.
I have a therapist, and I use my insurance, and I pay my therapist, and even if without, because I know sometimes for entrepreneurs as well, like insurance is a whole other like situation as well. At one point, I was having money aside, I was using BetterHelp, and that was helpful as well. I would say like I started in regards to my mental health, doing things that make me happy outside of work, because I think it's easy for your identity to become work, and I don't want my identity, like if work never happened, would anybody even know who I am? I'm silly, I'm goofy, I'm Jamaican, I'm ignorant Jamaican, I will slap up a wall if I hear my favorite song, okay, period. So I find things that bring me joy. I used to dance, so I take dance classes, I used to play the piano, I'm starting piano lessons again, so I think that's also an act of me trying to balance my mental health and hanging out with friends. I love getting a drink and going to the bar and having a key, and I think that's helpful as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a lot of your stories relate back to your community and it's how you build. How have you created your community to make sure that you're the most impactful version of yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. How have I created my community to make sure I'm the best version of myself? That is a really good question. You know, I feel like throughout my life, I've had friends for seasons. I've had friends that I realize are no longer, it was a different season of my life, it was a different human being. And then I have friends who made it through all seasons. And I think it's something that I really do feel like if your friend is supposed to be in that season, they're there, and you know their essence and their aura. You get to know them, because I'm not gonna lie, I've had friends when I was at Georgia State that are still my friends. I've had friends that over time I was like, I'm not trying to talk about Real Housewives of Atlanta anymore. Like we talk about that all the time. That was my stage of life when I was watching them heavy, and I felt like I was one of them, but I'm not. And it's like, okay, we're still talking about that though. Let's talk about something else. And they couldn't talk, and then I realized like, oh, okay, this friendship is no longer, I can't force you to come with me and whatever it is. You're in your journey, I'm in mine. So I think it's a lot of check-ins with yourself, and it's hard. Like ending friendships feels like a breakup. Like it does. It's painful. It don't feel good. Like cutting friends. I am somebody who's like, I'm a very loyal friend, so cutting off friends feels like my shame. So yeah, I think to make sure I'm answering the question properly is honestly how I've built community is. I don't even work to get friends, I will say. On my end, it's just kind of like a conversation thing where it's like you feel a connection. It's like dating, actually. Like you kind of feel like a pull, like, oh, you're dope. Like, let's go get drinks, or let's go. And then you start to talk to them more, and then you find yourself wanting to hang out with them because there's such a good vibe. And so, yeah, I think that's the way it kind of builds, is that you start to feel that connection. You start to see there's a lot of things where you're equal in certain things, and not even equal. They have things that they could teach you, and I think that's the most impactful thing, yeah, in building friends. Go ahead, Robert.
Before I ask my question, I encourage y'all to continue to connect. We're getting ready to take a quick intermission before we start our panel. The community pieces that we've talked about throughout the night are real, they're very tangible, and unless y'all tap in, it will seem imaginary. So when we do that little intermission, y'all hear the music come on, I start begging y'all for money at the bar, that's when you duck off to the side and say, hey, I heard that question you asked earlier and I had something similar in my mind. Hey, you answered a certain thing and I wouldn't mind going a little bit deeper.
Sure.
That's why one little commercial. Can you tell us about pivotal moments? And I'm sorry if you already answered this in some way. I want to pull out maybe a few more. The moments I'm excited about hearing are, one, times where there were projects that you had heavily invested in and it was finally time to let go. And then the other version, when you knew damn well you had no business doing it, but you decided to let the reins off and you won anyway.
Oh gosh, say that last one. Say that again so I can make sure.
If I had to maybe to set up the scenario, there was an idea that you came up with or that somebody presented to you and for some reason you were like, nah, I can do that. And when you ask maybe a mentor or an advisor, they're like, the best thing for you to do is wait. And you said, cool, I'm gonna take your advice, but I'm gonna do my own thing.
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'm gonna answer the second one and then I'll go back to the first one. In regards to pivotal moments, I wouldn't even say it was an event thing in regards to pivotal moment or a career. And maybe it was a career thing, but honestly, my biggest pivotal moment was leaving Atlanta, to be honest with you, and going to Syracuse. And Atlanta is a great place, very affordable when it wants to be. And a lot of people don't leave Atlanta for that purpose of financial stability. You get into a routine, you might meet your college boyfriend, and it rolls into your fiance, and then you just get married, or your college girlfriend, or whatever. And I remember the big pivotal moment was, and I graduated already. I was working at the CDC in a communications department for 2 years. And in Atlanta, you get your comfy job. You work at Delta, CNN, the CDC, Channel 2 Action News, anything that's like in relation to like a big space. You don't leave. You just build. And I was like, I'm gonna apply to grad school. Why not? And I remember saying to myself that, and other people around me were like, why would you leave the CDC? Like it's hard to get into like working there, and that was a job I got out of undergrad, God's grace, and they were offering me a raise to stay, position change, and I was opting to not get a salary and go back to school. And a lot of people were not encouraging me, except for my pops. Like my pops was very encouraging of me doing it, but also like I'm his only daughter. I'm leaving. I'm going to New York, and New York is not a foreign place. My parents met in New York City, but it's a very full circle moment for me to actually come to New York. And I remember saying, like, again, it was more so if God wants you to do it and you feel in your spirit, it's gonna happen. Syracuse was the only place I applied to. And I didn't have plans I was like, if it don't work out, it don't work out, and I'm gonna just take the reins and hey, and I got in, and I was so shocked when I got in that I deferred the acceptance. I was like, wait a second, I'm not ready. Hold on a second. So in regards to pivotal, where someone was like, and I'm just like, hold my beer. I'm gonna see about something. That was me applying to Syracuse and opting to go to cold ass upstate New York and be in this very hard program for a year. But I'm glad I did it because I wouldn't be here. So that's the first. The second, what was the first again?
The first one was when were you maybe heavily invested in a project that you planned a lot about, you prayed a lot about, and then you finally realized it's time to let go?
You know what's crazy is I have a problem with letting go, and I did do a project. I won't say when because y'all might be able to identify eventually what it might be. But I did do a project, and it was my brainchild, but it started off well, and then it started to get ridiculously hard, and I don't want it to seem like because it's hard, you weren't supposed to do it. But it was like roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and when the event, and everything in me was saying like, Sarai, come on, like, out of all people, you should just, nobody's gonna look at you crazy for just saying this event is postponed or canceled. And again, this is my own personal problem, is I don't know when to let go of a project. So I saw it through all the way to the end. And I wish I didn't. I wish I had just said, okay, this idea is not working, let it go. But it was a huge learning lesson for me. Financially, I was fine. Emotionally, I was not. I was burnt out. I was tired. I was going back and forth. It was everything from the DJ to the host. The host backed out on me 2 days before. I had to scramble and find a new host. Like everything that I was planning with this event, and this was my own, again, brainchild. I wasn't planning for someone. Was literally like running into one thing after another. And it was a learning lesson for me that when I'm starting to see signs in the beginning, even if it's a client, because there's moments like a client will come up to me. I had this one client come up to me and she had like a 5-part event in one day. And it was like a fashion show, hair show, dog show, like everything you could think of was in one. And she was like, I have this idea. And I'm like, okay, great, it's cool. But in my head, I'm like, okay. And then we started to have the meeting. And after a while, I realized I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I'm just not the person to do it. There's somebody else that can do it. And it took a lot for me to be the one to actually say no after a while. And so that was a huge learning lesson was, I guess, crashing and burning was my learning lesson that to learn to say no would feel like. When you start to sense in your spirit that something not going well, just save yourself the trouble. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, can I get started around the applause? For those who just came, welcome. We got a couple of dogs if y'all saw them walking. They keep us safe, warm, and feeling loved at all times. So if you get to see them again, scratch one.
One of them is a bear.
One of them is a bear. But he, look, for the people who grew up in the 90s, his name is Blue.
Oh.
Bear in the big blue house. Easy way to remember. We're gonna take maybe a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute if the food comes.
15 because it's outside in like 2 minutes.
There we go. 15-minute break. Y'all to grab some refreshments, use a bathroom, reacquaint yourselves with the folks we brought in the room, and then we'll come back in just a second for our controlling the narrative. Camera discussion. So with that, thank y'all. I'm getting ready to turn some music, and we'll be back in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Boom, boom, bang.